Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending to this last session of the i4Trust and FIWARE training. The idea today is that we are going to present the different components and the different services that we have in order to create data spaces. In this session, we are going to focus on three main things. We are going to start with the marketplace component that we have developed in the context of the i4Trust project. Then we'll continue with some advanced IAM capabilities, and we will present all the iSHARE stuff. And then we will finish the session with some demonstration on how all the pieces are put together. Well, I'm going to present this first presentation. My name is Francisco de la Vega. I am CTO from FICODES. FICODES is member of the FIWARE Foundation, and I am personally member of the FIWARE TSC. We at FICODES, within the FIWARE ecosystem, we are in charge of two main components. On the one hand, we are working with a visualization tool intended for the creation of dashboards, which is called WarCloud. And on the other hand, we are responsible for the business API ecosystem software, which is the one I'm presenting now in order to develop different marketplaces and asset monetization. This is the agenda that we are going to follow in this first part of the presentation. I'm going to start with an introduction of what is the business API ecosystem generic enabler as a FIWARE component. Then I'm going to review a couple of the main concepts that need to be known around the business API ecosystem software. Then I'm going to focus on the specific instance that we have created for the i4Trust project, which is the i4Trust marketplace, how it's integrated with the iSHARE components that are going to be presented in the next topic. And finally, I will make some step-by-step demo showing how it is possible to register assets, how it is possible to create offers in this i4Trust marketplace. So let's start with the business API ecosystem. The business API ecosystem software is a generic enabler from the FIWARE ecosystem, which is basically a tool that allows the creation of digital marketplaces. And these digital marketplaces are intended for the monetization of any kind of digital asset. The idea with the business API ecosystem is that it provides the tool to manage the life cycle of the different product offers. So it provides the functionality to manage this life cycle since the product creation to the monetization, also billing, payment, and the revenue sharing of the incomes generated by a specific offer. It is fully integrated with all the IAM components and the FIWARE security framework, so you can use your FIWARE identities in order to sign in this marketplace, buy, create offers, etc. And one very important point is that this software, the business API ecosystem software, is relying on the TM Forum business ecosystem open APIs. So the whole functionality exposed by the business API ecosystem is also exposed through APIs that are standard, which are this standardized set of APIs defined by the TM Forum. Okay, so we can review a little bit which are the main characteristics from the business API ecosystem software. As I have introduced, the business API ecosystem software is not directly a marketplace for the monetization of a specific kind of product, but a tool that allows you to develop this kind of marketplaces. So the main important point with the business API ecosystem is that it's highly customizable. You can create your own branding, you can create your own themes for the business API ecosystem, and you can also customize the security of this component. The business API ecosystem is integrated with multiple identity providers. We are fully integrated with, of course, with FIWARE Keyrock, but we are also integrated with Keycloak from Red Hat. And in case you have very simple scenarios where you don't need where you just need some identities and you don't want to control roles of users and these kind of things, it is also possible to use GitHub as identity provider of the marketplace. In addition to this, the marketplace is intended for the monetization of any kind of digital asset. But how is this achieved in the real world? The marketplace software, the business API ecosystem software, is only dealing with those specific features that are common to any kind of product. We are talking about product creation, billing, payment, and these kind of things. And those functionalities that are specific to the type of asset that you want to monetize, for example, data or a query to the context blocker, or I don't know, an application that can be uploaded and downloaded, or static data that is just a file, they are different kind of assets. The specific code that is needed in order to validate these assets and that is needed in order to activate these assets when they are acquired are loaded into the business API ecosystem by the means of plugins. It is possible to develop plugins. Each plugin is intended to add support for one single specific type of digital asset. For example, that might be a plugin which is query to the context blocker. That would be a plugin. Android application would be another plugin, etc. So these validations and the activation of the service is done in this plugin that can be plug and play within the business API ecosystem in order to start supporting the monetization of new kind of products. Okay, as I said, the business API ecosystem is dealing with the payment. So in order to do that, it supports you to define different price models. The business API ecosystem is based on is based on three main price models, which are one-time payment on single payments, which are you pay and you get the offer in that moment. We are also supporting subscriptions or recurring payments, which are the typical price model or price schema where you pay an amount monthly or an amount per year on these kind of schemas. And we are also supporting pay-per-use, which means that you are charged based on the usage that you are making of the different service. In addition to these basic models, it is also possible to publish free offers in case you want to offer some kind of asset or some kind of product by free. And there are two types of models in order to publish something for free. It is possible to publish something as free, which means that the different customers need to acquire your product and accept the terms and conditions of your product before getting it, even if it is free. This is quite useful, for example, if you want to offer some data, but you need the people to accept the terms and conditions or the license of the data before start consuming it. Or if you have something which is fully open, like can be fully open data or whatever kind of stuff, you can create the define model which is called open, which means that the different users of the system will be able to access to your asset without even the need of acquiring the product. Okay, and in addition to this, we have some advanced models. It is possible to modify the basic model of one-time subscriptions, pay-per-use, with some advanced feature. It is possible to make some dynamic things. For example, it is possible to add an initial payment to a pay-per-use model, or something more dynamic. For example, it is possible to create a discount of the 3% if you make more than 10,000 calls to the API. For example, these kind of things are also supported by the business API ecosystem. In addition to this, the business API ecosystem is supporting the definition of the terms and conditions that need to be satisfied by the service and that need to be accepted by the customers. So on the one hand, we have the possibility of adding which is the license or which are in general the terms and conditions that are applying to a specific offer. We are giving you the possibility of choosing if in the specific case of the data, you can choose between a list of open data licenses that are already built in the system. We are also providing a wizard that can be used in order to define these terms, adding which is the exclusivity, which is the region, which is the time frame, or which is the purpose of the usage that can be done of the data. And if any of this is filling your needs, it is also possible to provide just a custom text license where you can just write the license directly as text. And in addition to this, it is possible to add support. It is also possible to add different service level agreement metrics. So when you are creating your offer, you can pick and add different service level agreement metrics that your service is supposed to be satisfying. And well, the final feature that we had for the business API ecosystem is the support for revenue sharing models, which means that if you have a specific offer where you have multiple stakeholders involved, not only the provider that is publishing the offer in the marketplace, it is possible to define this kind of revenue sharing models where you establish the percentage of the incomes that you are going to get and the percentage of the incomes that is going to be shared with other stakeholders in the system. Okay, the system is allowing you to put this revenue sharing model attached to the different offers in the system, and then you will, from the business API ecosystem revenue sharing graphical interface, you are able to see all the transactions that you had for your different models, and you get the reports stating how much money needs to be distributed to the different stakeholders and is executed in backend. Okay, so this is the introduction to the business API ecosystem. So now we can move to view which are the different concepts around the business API ecosystem software. Well, all the concepts and elements that are managed by the business API ecosystem software, as I said, are taken from the TM Forum specification. From the point of view of the catalog element, we have a couple of objects that are taken from the catalog management API in its version 14.5. And well, basically we have categories which are created by a system administrator and are basically allowing the different customers to categorize their offers so they are easy to be discovered in the graphical interface. This category is these categories are created by the system admin, so are part of the system, and all the users in the system are sharing the same set of categories, and they are chosen by the offer provider when creating the different offer. And on the other hand, we have the catalogs. The catalogs allows you to categorize your offer, but the catalogs are created by the specific provider. So you as a provider, you are able to create different catalogs in order to group your offers. This combination of the categories and the catalogs allows the different customers to easily discover the different offers that are published within the business API ecosystem software. In addition to this, we have all the models that are needed for creating products, which are also taken from the catalog management API. We are managing three things here. On the one hand, we have the concept of asset, which is the real digital asset that have been registered in the system. That is the specific query to the context blocker if you are selling data, the specific file if you are selling some kind of application or static data, the specific API of the service. This is the asset. On top of the asset, we have the product specification, which is the object that is defining all the product-related information that is linked to the asset, which means which is the specific asset, which are the different product characteristics that can be customized and that can be chosen by the different users and customers. You can add also attachments, which means that you can upload. Imagine you have some kind of service. One thing that can be done in the product specification is uploading the documentation in PDF as an attachment of the product and these kind of things. And then we have the product offer or the product offering, which is the object that defines the business-related information and is linked to the product. So it includes which is the catalog where you are going to publish your offer, which is the product specification that you are going to offer, which is the license, which is the service level agreement, which are the price models, and which are the revenue sharing models. One interesting point is that there is not a one-to-one relationship between product specification and product offers. So it is possible to define a product specification for a specific service or for a specific file or application, and then you can create multiple offers on top of this product specification with different price models, with different service level agreements, or different revenue sharing models, depending on your use case and your business model. In addition to this, we have some usage elements. As I mentioned before, the business API ecosystem software is supporting pay-per-use models. In order to be able to fit these pay-per-use models and actually charge and bill the different users under the usage of the services, what we are using is the usage management API from the TM forum, also in its version 14.5, where we are using two different kind of objects. We have what it is called the usage specification. A usage specification is exactly that. It defines the kind of usage information that is expected for a given product offer. So it includes which are the units that are going to be monitored, which are the metrics that are going to be used, etc. And attached to this usage specification, what we are going to have is a couple of usage documents. Each usage document includes an actual usage that has been made of a specific product specification asset during a period of time. So you have the consumption that has been made of that asset. In addition to this, the usage document has some billing related information, as it is, it includes information whether it has been charged to the user or not, and also it has the amount to be paid for that specific usage document. Okay, and finally we have all the stuff related with the revenue sharing. We are managing three types of objects regarding the revenue sharing. On the one hand, we have the revenue sharing model. The revenue sharing model is the object, or is the model that establishes how the incomes generated by a set of offers need to be distributed among the different stakeholders. So it includes three main things. On the one hand, it includes what it is called the platform percentage. The platform percentage is something that is configured by the system administrator and establish the amount that the owner of the marketplace instance is going to get from all the transactions that happens in their system. This is something that can be configured to 0. So it depends on the specific deployer and the specific instance. So if you are deploying your business API ecosystem instance, you can decide that you want, as part of your business model, to get a small amount of all the incomes generated by all the offers in your system. In addition to this platform percentage, you can configure your own percentage. How much amount are you going to get from your different offers? You cannot override the platform percentage, so the maximum amount that you can configure for your providing percentage is 100 minus the platform percentage. And then you can also configure the stakeholders percentage, so you can add any number of stakeholders that you want and specify which is the percentage that each stakeholder is going to receive. Then within the revenue sharing system, we have which is called the transactions, which are all the payments that are made by customer and linked to a specific revenue sharing model. So it's the information about the payments. And then we have the revenue sharing report, which is the result of applying the different revenue sharing models to all the transactions in the system. So it says how much money it's going to be paid to the provider and how much money is going to be paid to the different stakeholders in the system. Okay, so this is all from the point of view of the pure generic enabler of the business API ecosystem. And now we can talk about a real instance of this software, which is the marketplace that we have created within the i4Trust project. First of all, this marketplace is fully integrated with the iSHARE components that are going to be presented in detail in the next presentation. But basically, we have a global instance, which is the i4Trust marketplace, that is offered to all the participants in the organization. The idea is that this marketplace has support, thanks to the iSHARE protocol that is going to be explained later, support to multiple identity providers. So you, as a provider or as a customer, are able to sign into the marketplace using your own identity provider. That's it. The Keylock, Keycloak, or whatever identity provider you have in your own organization. In addition to this, well, the idea here is that each identity provider is going to own their own FIWARE infrastructure, which means that you have your identity provider, you also have your security framework, you have your context broker, etc. Okay, and then you use this iSHARE JSON Web Token in order to authenticate the marketplace in these different identity providers and get the user profile for the users in those specific identity providers. Okay, so you can sign in into the i4Trust marketplace using your own identity if you are a valid participant in the data space. What are we talking about? We are talking about this architecture that I think is going to be presented later also. And what we have is, we have the different participants in the data space. Each of the participants has their own FIWARE infrastructure, and they are able to log into the marketplace software using their own identity, and they are able to publish the data that is offered in their context broker. And then customers from other organizations are also able to log into this i4Trust marketplace using the identity of their system and by data that is offered by any of these providers in the data space. So this way we are creating an environment when each participant in the data space is able to offer their data and also acquire data that is offered by other organizations. Okay, and how is this achieved? Just to give some details on how it is possible that you can log into the marketplace using your own identity. This is thanks to this protocol that I'm going to explain right now. Just an overview on this, because probably you are going to have more detailed information later. But the first thing that you need to do is that you access into the marketplace, you select your identity provider in the list that the marketplace has registered in the system. And when you select your identity provider, the marketplace is going to build what is called an iSHARE JSON Web Token with the identity of the marketplace and also the identity of the identity provider of the participant that you are going to be you are going to access. And well, the marketplace admits this JSON Web Token to the provider in order to authenticate itself. The identity provider is going to receive this JSON Web Token, is going to decode the JSON Web Token, is going to validate the signature of the JSON Web Token, and is going to build another JSON Web Token that is used in order to access what is called the iSHARE satellite, which, if you attended my presentation yesterday, this is what I call the trust provider component. So accessing this trust provider, the identity provider is able to know whether the marketplace is a valid participant or not in the data space, and as a valid participant in the data space is authorized to read a user profile and this kind of information. So it validates that the marketplace is okay, so the identity provider returns to the marketplace the login endpoint, the website that the user is going to be redirected in order to authenticate itself. So the marketplace picks this login endpoint, redirects the browser of the user to that specific endpoint, and what the user is going to see is the login window from its own identity provider. So the user is authenticated there. The user provides its credentials, and after that, the identity provider returns. This is using OpenID Connect protocol or Auth2 protocol. And if you are familiar with this, or you attended my presentation yesterday, the idea is that once the user has provided its credentials, the identity provider is going to return to the callback URL that has been provided an authorization code that is going to be exchanged by an access token and an identity token. And this access token can also be used in order to get the user profile from the original identity provider and load the user info and create a user session within the marketplace. Okay, so this is how the marketplace and the modifications that we have done in the marketplace is able to authenticate users using different identity providers that belongs to third parties, which are not the owners of the marketplace. In addition to this, we have developed a new extension, which it's called NGSILD data service extension, which allows the different participants in the data space to create or to publish queries or data that is saved into their context broker as product assets in the marketplace. So they can be discovered, they can be acquired, and those customers that are buying the different offers are going to be authorized in order to access to this specific data. In order to do that, we have developed this NGSILD data service, which allows you to provide a lot of metadata about the kind of query to the context broker that you are offered. So basically, when you are creating this kind of product, you need to provide which is the context broker URL of your context broker, of course, which entity you want to offer, and then what actions can be executed on top of that entity. So what attributes of the entity can be get, what attributes of that entity can be posted, what attribute of the entity can be patched, and what attributes can be deleted. And an extra field, which is the duration of the policy, which is how much time when is a customer going to be authorized to access to the data, basically the duration of the contract. Okay, so we have all this metadata, but how is this plugin working? When you create a new product, this extension, the code of this extension is going to validate that all the information that you have provided is really valid, and validate that you are authorized to do what you are doing, of course. And after that, it is going to pick all the metadata that you have provided as part of the asset, and is going to create some characteristics into the product specification object. As I have mentioned before, one of the things that a product specification has is a list of characteristics. So in order for potential customers to review what kind of product is really sell, this extension is picking all this metadata and is created automatically some characteristics into the product. And then the more important point, what happens when an offer is acquired with this data? Well, the marketplace is going to build an iSHARE JSON web token, and as we have discussed before, and is going to authenticate itself using the client credentials in order to get an access token that is used in order to access to the authorization registry of the data owner. These are concepts that are going to be presented. Once you are authenticated within the authorization registry of the data owner, you are able to create a new policy. So we are going to get this metadata, which is the attribute, which is the entity, which are the attributes, which are the actions that can be done with the different attributes, etc. And it's going to create a policy. And this policy is going to be saved into this authorization registry of the data owner. And that's it. With the authorization registry, with this policy submitted into the authorization registry of the data owner, you are now able to query the context broker because you are authorized in order to do that. Okay, so this has been a lot of theory until this point. So I'm going to use the real instance that we have created for the i4Trust marketplace, and I'm going to show you how it is possible to register these assets and how it is possible to create offers and these kind of things. Okay, so this is the marketplace instance that we have deployed in the demo environment. So this is an instance of the business API ecosystem where you can see that in the initial page, you have a list of all the offers that are currently published in the system. You are able to search using a full text search. You are able to search by category, or you are able to search by catalog, any of these. And if you are a provider, the first thing that you need to do is to sign into the system. So you have to click on sign in. This instance, as I stated before, is integrated with the different identity providers for different organizations. So when you click on sign in, you are presented all the different organizations, IDPs, and you can choose the one that you are belonging to. I mean, if you are a member of the packet delivery company, you should use the packet delivery company identity provider. You choose this one, and then you can sign into the system. What has happened is that I has been redirected to my identity provider, which is the identity provider from the packet delivery company, and I'm going to sign into the system. And now I have signed into the marketplace using an identity that is managed by my own organization. Okay, so this is how the marketplace looks like when when you are logged in. Now we are able to see something which is the shopping cart, and we have this navigation menu. In this menu, you have the homepage, which is the one that is used for searching. You have the one that is called My Inventory, which is the place where you are going to find all the offers that you have acquired. So all your products or your bought product are going to be displayed in My Inventory, including the product that you have bought and also the different product orders that you have created in order to buy this. And then we have the section which is called My Stock, which is the one that we are going to use now in order to play a little bit with this. Within the My Stock section is where you are going to create the different catalogs, the different product specifications, and the different offers. If you want to monetize something, it is mandatory that you have at least one catalog, okay? Because all the offers need to be published within a catalog. So creating a catalog is quite simple. The only thing you need to do is clicking on New. You have to provide name for the catalog, and you can provide an optional description. Okay, and now with this name and this description, you can create a catalog. And here you have the catalog that you have created. One important thing is that, as you can see, there is something here which is called the status, which is basically used in order to manage the life cycle of the catalog itself. Something which is in active state, and it applies to the three objects, to the specification and also to the offers. Something which is in active state means that it's something like a draft. It's something that only you, as the provider of this, is able to see within the My Stock section. If you want this to be live and allow all the customers in the system to start seeing your catalog, you need to move it into launch it state. So when you click on launch it state and you update this, means that now this catalog is available to all the users. When you decide that you don't want to offer this catalog a product or an offer anymore, you can move it into retirement state. And if you want to remove it definitely, you can move it into obsolete state. So if we have a look at the home, you will see that now my training catalog is here. At this stage, we don't have any product or any offer, but my catalog is here. So we have the name, we have the description, and you can also filter by category, by search. So you can combine all these things in order to discover the different offers. Okay, so we have our catalog. The next step is creating a product, is registering a product. So we can go to the product specification section, and in order to create a product is similar to the catalog, we have to click on new, and now we have a couple of things to fill. The first thing that we need to provide is a name. Then you can provide a version, which typically is going to be the same version as the product that you are providing. For example, if you are providing an application or something like that, it would be great that this version would be similar to the version of your asset in general. You can provide a brand stating which is the branding of the product that you are creating. Then you have an optional field, which is the ID number, which is not the ID of the product in the business API ecosystem. This ID number is used in those scenarios where the kind of product you are offered has an ID number in your system. Okay, so if you have some kind of identification for your product within your company, this is something that can be placed here. And finally, you can provide an optional description for the product that is going to be displayed to the customers when acquiring and these kind of things. Then we have a second option, which is called bundle, which allows you to create a bundle of products. A bundle of products is a product that incorporates multiple products. So in case you want to offer something you want to offer a bunch of products in a single offer, you can create a bundle of products. For example, you may create a product which is access to some data, and then you may create another product which is a visualization tool. And you may create an offer for the data and a different offer for the visualization tool. And then you can create a product bundle with the two products and offer them together with a lower price than buying the things separately. For example, this is something that can be implemented with the bundle functionality. But now we move to the asset section, which is the most important for a product. First of all, we need to say that this is a digital product, and now is where the different plugins are being displayed here. This, which is called the digital asset type, is a select which has a list with all the plugins, all the asset plugins that has been installed within the system. Now we have one which is called basic file that allows us just to upload a file providing some media type. So if you create a product with this, when someone buys the offer, what they are going to get is just a link where they will be able to download your asset file. But in our case, the one that we want to use is the one for i4Trust, which is the NGSILD data service. Okay, so here we have a lot of information that can be provided. The first thing that we need to provide is the asset URL, which is the context blocker endpoint. Then, in this specific case, the media type is forced to FIWARE NGSILD because it's the only thing that can be monetized with this specific asset. And then we have to provide some specific information of the product that we are going to offer. First of all, we need to provide which is the ID of the authorization registry where the business API ecosystem software is going to create the different policies when you are buying this. And also you need to provide the endpoint of the authorization registry where the business API ecosystem is going to create the policies. These two things are needed in order to create the policies when the different customers are buying the offer. Then you have to provide the duration of the contract, or how the duration of the policy, how many times the customer is going to be authorized in order to access to this specific data. And now we have the information about the data itself. Here in the resource type, you need to provide, can be delivery order. Here in this specific field, you have to provide which is the entity type that you want to monetize. And then you have to specify whether you are going to allow GET request and what attributes you are allowing the GET request, which could be, you can use the wildcard to say all of them. So if you buy this offer, the customers are going to be able to make a GET request to all the attributes of the delivery order entity within this context blocker. You can create something more advanced. For example, you can say that you are also allowing patch requests to these two specific attributes, for example, etc. So when you are happy with the kind of the data that you are offering, you can move to the next section, which are the characteristics. Here, it is possible to add any kind of custom characteristics that you want the different customers to read about your product. This is information. This is just intended in order to provide extra description of your product to the different customers, but this is not mandatory. Then we have attachments, which is any kind of file that you want to attach to your product so the different customers can download. One very important thing is that attachments are fully public. So if you provide an attachment into a product, the different customers from the system does not need to buy your product in order to download the attachment. So take care. If something is restricted, provide it as an asset. If you provide something here, you need to take into account that this information is public. And you also can provide here the data, the image. Okay, so you can pick the image, and this is the image that is going to be displayed. Then there is a possibility, which is creating relationships between products. If you have other products in the system, it is possible to state that this product is dependent on other, or is a migration of other product, or you are replacing one product by another. So you can provide this as relationships. And the last step is reviewing all the information that you have provided and creating the product. Okay, so we have here all the information of the product and can be also updated. Here we can review the characteristics of the product, and you can see that we have a lot of characteristics, for example, the entity type, the patch permission, which is authorized here, the get permission that is authorized here, a lot of characteristics that has been automatically created by the business API ecosystem using the metadata that has been provided to the asset. Here you can also play with attachment, you can modify the logo and these kind of things. Okay. So we are happy with our product and we can launch our product. Okay, so now our product is launched. And the final step, if we want to monetize our query to the context broker and share this data with all the potential customers, is creating an offer. So in order to create an offer, we need to go to this section. And again, we can create new, and here we have a lot of steps. This can be my data offer. You have to provide a name. You can provide a description. There is also the possibility to provide some places where the offer is going to be available. Just in case you have some geographical stuff on these kind of things, you can specify this information here. It is also possible to create bundles of offers which are similar to the product ones, but with the difference that you don't need to create. You can bundle the stuff directly with an offer if you don't want to create a specific product with all the assets together. So if you have two products with two different things, you can create a bundle with the offers of these two specific products and offer, for example, a better pricing is if a couple of things are bought together and these kind of things. Okay, so you have to choose which is the product specification that you are going to monetize. In this case, the one that we have created, my data product. Then you have to choose the catalog where this stuff is going to be published. In this case, my training catalog. Then you can choose the categories from the system in order to categorize your offer. In this case, we don't have categories in the system, so we cannot provide anyone. And in the next step, we have to provide the license from our product, which is we can leave it in this way. We can leave it without a license. If what the stuff that we are offering is some kind of open data, you can choose from a list of open data licenses that we already have in the system. Any of this one. If not, you can create a custom license, providing some title, some description, and then choosing whether your product is going to be exclusive or not. Choose which is the sector where it is going to be applied, which is the region, which is the time frame, which is the purpose, if it can be used for commercial purpose or not, whether you can transfer or you will have the right to sub-license the product and these kind of things. And if any of this is okay for you, you can always go to the custom license free text and write here whatever you want. In this case, I don't know, I can choose, for example, whatever open data license I want. Then here you can define the different service level agreement metrics. So here you can specify, for example, that our update rate for 1 day is going to be 10, etc., and this kind of stuff. Okay, and in the next step, we have to provide which are the price plans that are going to be offered to the different customers when buying this specific offer. So first of all, this is not an open offer. So I'm removing this, and now I can add a price plan. For example, we can add a recurring payment. We can add a recurring payment, and for that, we choose that the type is going to be recurring, and it may be 10 euros per month, for example. Here you can provide a description for the plan. Okay, and you can create a price plan. Note that you can create any number of price plans for the same offer. So we have this one, but it is possible to add another one. For example, a usage plan. In this case, it could be €1 per API call. You can also provide a description. And as I said, it is possible to add some dynamic stuff into the price model, which is what is called here the price alteration. So it is possible to add another price component, for example. So if you choose a one-time payment and you place here €10, what you are saying is when you buy the product, you are going to pay an initial fee on €10, and then the rest of during the duration of the contract, you are going to pay in usage basis. Or you can create something more dynamic. You can create, for example, a discount or a fee. In this case, we can, for example, place a discount and tell 2% and say when the user makes more than 10,000 API calls, we are going to give a 2% of discount. We can create this price plan, and then we have both of them. Okay, and finally, the last step is choosing the revenue sharing model. Here I have two defines. The default revenue model is the one that comes with the platform. This has a platform percentage of this and a provided percentage of this, and this is one that I have manually created, which includes two stakeholders. You can choose any of them, for example, this one or this one. And in the last step, you have to review all the information that you have provided for your data offer. So you have all the information and you can create your data offer. And in a similar way that we have done with the product, if we want to make this stuff public to the different users, you have to launch the offer. And now that the offer is updated, the offer is here and can be bought by the different providers. So if we go to our catalog, we'll see that the offer is here. And if we try to buy it, we can review all the stuff that we have provided. So we can see all the characteristics of the product. You can see that I cannot add it to the cart. This is because I need to explicitly accept the terms and conditions, and I still cannot add it to the cart. And this is because as we have provided two price plans, we need to choose one. In this case, we can choose whatever is better for our needs. If we are going to make a lot of, if we are going to use a lot the product, probably it's better to choose the recurring. And if we are going to use it not so much, maybe it's better to pick the usage one. And now you can add it to the cart. Okay. Okay, so this is all from the point of view of creating an offer. The last thing that you can do with the marketplace is the revenue sharing section. The revenue sharing section is here. In the revenue sharing section, you have all the revenue sharing models that you have created, and creating a revenue sharing model is quite simple. The only thing you need to do is clicking here, providing a product class, for example, and say how much you are going to take, for example, a 50%. Now we can add stakeholders in case we want. For example, we can pick rehab 10% and George employee another 10%. Now we can review our price model where we have the product class, which is the ID. This is what is used in revenue sharing system in order to identify the revenue sharing model, the platform percentage, the provider percentage, and the stakeholders. And now you can create your revenue sharing model that can be edited at any moment. You can remove the stakeholders, you can add the stakeholders or whatever you want, and your revenue sharing model will be displayed here. In addition to this, but at this stage, we don't have too many transactions here. In this section, you are going to see all the transactions that has been done by the customers that are buying your products. The different transactions are applied to the revenue sharing models periodically, monthly, but in case you want, for whatever reason, to launch a report for a specific revenue sharing model, you can do so, clicking on new report, and it's going to be automatically generated for all the pending transactions for a specific revenue share model. And once all the transactions has finished, all the reports are going to be displayed in this view. Okay, so That would be all from the point of view of the marketplace component. So maybe we can move to Rajiv, or maybe we can answer a couple of questions regarding the marketplace at this stage. Okay, no question at this point. So now I'm going to give the presentation to Rajiv, and he will be starting with the IAM components for the identity management and access control. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'll put that in presentation mode. Hello and warm welcome to everyone. I'm Rajiv. I'm from iSHARE Foundation. And I'm going to explain to you how what are the concepts of i4Trust in terms of identity and access management, and how what iSHARE brings in i4Trust in that sense. So we'll see the concepts behind that. So it's a bit. So when we start, I think if you remember this, then. This is the role model in a data space that we see as the bare minimum that we need in order to create a data space, and the roles are basically on the trust provider, which provides sort of the list of all the members of the data space, and also I'll explain it in more detail how it enables trust in the network and what additional things it can provide in the network. In the middle, you can see the data exchange layer, where there is on one side the data consumer and on the other side the provider. But more importantly, also the data owner is considered, because it's data owner wants to share that data with data consumer. And of course, at the bottom, you see the enabler roles that enable in any data space the possibility to share data. And for secure sharing of data, you need basically the identities of the users. So that is fulfilled by the identity providers. And you need to make sure that the right identities have the right authorizations, so you can check that with the authorization registry provider. Another important role is, of course, the marketplace, as was just being explained by Francisco. It enables data owners and data providers on one end to publish what data they want to sell, or make it available to the consumers. And on the other hand, it allows the discovery of that data to for the data consumers. So it plays a key role in specifically in data monetization and service discovery. Here you can see the role model of iSHARE, as we had defined in the iSHARE standard, where again at the top you see the two roles, where the data consumer and data provider is there, and at the bottom is the data owner, all on the red circles. They are the parties who are interested in data sharing, and in the middle you will see this roles which are defined, which enables the data sharing. Again, it's the same roles: identity providers, authorization registry, and satellite. So we will see how that maps into the data space concept, because this role model is also from the data space concept. So yeah, so what is an iSHARE satellite? iSHARE satellite, as in the as you can see in the data space, it acts as a trust provider role, right? So iSHARE has specified iSHARE satellite as a role as well, which is a federated role. So it is not a central authority, but it's actually quite distributed, and each data space would have at least one satellite or one trust provider. And its essential role is basically to onboard and maintain the list of current participants of the data space, right? What additionally it enables is it enables a multilateral trust between those participants, because when those participants join the data space, they sign a particular legal agreement saying that they would abide by certain terms and conditions or terms of use within that data space. And because each participant signs the same agreement, it enables other participants to trust each other, because they sign to the same terms and terms of use. So that concept is called multilateral trust. So that is what it enables in the key aspect, and that brings the trust that is needed within the data space, right? And of course, it also facilitates in the governance of the data space, because you can make all the agreements about the data space and publish it at the satellite, right? Then we'll look at another important role is the identity provider. The way we define identity provider is basically it identifies humans in the equation. So the identity provider is not specifically aimed at organizational identities, but it's mainly focusing at the human identities. The identity provider, as it is specified, is based on Open ID Connect standard. So it's also an open standard. But Open ID Connect standard is actually B2C, and what we want is usually is the B2B or B2G or government to citizen kind of scenarios. So what we have done is we have adopted Open ID Connect, and we have made a slight adjustment to it to make sure that it works well within this requirements that we have in business context, right? Then a brief about authorization registry role. What we have defined in as an authorization registry role is on the bottom right corner, you see the orange block. That's the APIs, that is the request response APIs that we have specified. The remaining aspects are actually to be implemented by the authorization registry third-party providers or a data owner can also implement that. The idea behind it is that either you have a policy database where you define the access policies based on which the data consumer can get access to data, or you use your existing information in your existing systems where you have already the information about who has authorization to what data. It can also be your backend systems where there is a transaction data. For example, in an order management system, you usually have also the information about who is the transporter assigned to it and things like that. So you can use that data when a transporter wants. Imagine if the transporter's backend system connects to your system and wants to know when the parcel is ready to be picked up. You can know which transporter can have access to that data just by using your transaction information, because that transporter is already attached to your order. So when it asks for certain order, when certain information is available, you can on the fly determine if that organization is allowed to have access data to that or not. Right. Here is an example of the request response model that we have defined in the authorization registry APIs. And here is an example of a response which is actually very fine-grained. As you can see here, it is quite specific into which attributes is allowed access to which subject, and what actions are allowed. On the other hand, of course, you can also have very broad authorization where it says anything is allowed by this particular organization, kind of. So The authorizations can be considered in two ways: machine to machine and human to machine. So in machine to machine, it's two machines, the backend systems talking, and the authorizations are at the organization level or at the machine level, which all components are allowed to talk, have data, access to certain data. Whereas on the human interaction, the human interacts using a portal or a mobile app, for example, and based on the identity of that user, the authorizations could be determined if that user is allowed to have access or not. Right. Now we will look at in either case, in human to machine or machine to machine. What Well, logically, if you talk about any data exchange transaction, you can always split that transaction into two logical parts. One is before you exchange data, you first need to identify who is connecting to you. You need to authenticate the identity of that participant, and you want to check the authorizations of that participant. So that's your IAM. And once you have established and found out that it has the right authorization, then you actually do the data transaction, as in you share the data using based on what was agreed, right? So the first part is very common, and we'll just go through it in detail, what that means when it comes, how it is defined in iShare. And for that, every basic IAM transaction has four parts, as you can see on the screen. One is, of course, the certificates that's used to identify the machines or the backends. So in iShare, we define organizations' backends identity by means of PKI. Because for humans, there is a human identity providers that provide the identities of the human. Second is we use JWT, that's your identity token, which you create and sign using that PKI certificate. And third is the client assertion, as we have defined, which is also based on JWT, but there are specific set of attributes that we require, as in to create that as a client assertion. And once you provide that as a client assertion to another party, the another party after validation can provide you the access token. So this, in essence, forms the first part of any data sharing transaction. So let's have a bit deeper look at each of these things first, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page and they understand these concepts very well. What is a certificate? It's actually a digital file. It's a digital file which provides the integrity or authenticity of the information about an organization, right? So it proves the ownership of that information, because any certificate has two parts. One is the public key information, and there is a corresponding private key which only that organization can have. So that concept is based on the PKI, and that is the concept we use in order to establish trust. And you get the digital certificates. They are issued only by certificate authorities, and these authorities have certain processes in place to make sure, or when they issue these certificates, they follow that process before issuing any organization certificate, right? So as I was mentioning, it has two parts: the public key, where you have the information about the organization and the backend server, and there is a corresponding private key which is secured and stored by the owner of this certificate. No one else normally has access to that, because if someone else has access, then that person can also impersonate the other organization, right? So iShare specifies the identities based on PKI certificates. So but we don't accept every kind of PKI certificate. So there are specific kind of certificates that we have listed. that are needed by the organizations to be procured in order to register themselves in the satellite. And right now, those certificates are primarily based on eIDAS. It's another SEF framework for organizational identities or digital signing certificates that you can get under eIDAS framework, which allows you to digitally sign any data. So we rely on that, right? In iShare, when we say X5C value, it's basically the public part of the certificate that you need to add into the token. Usually a P12 file is a file where you have a combination of public and private key. It's under the one file, right? So how does this certificate help in establishing trust, and how do we use that? So imagine there is some data or a file this is a digital thing, and you can use you can sign that data or file using the private key that you have. There are tools available to do that. Right. Once you sign it, you get a result output, which is actually signed information with the same data, but additionally it has some additional cryptographic characters added to it, which allows the recipient to validate if actually it was signed by you. And the advantage of that is if the data is changed in this file, for example, the signature and the whole file becomes invalid, so it will never validate at the other end. So that way, the receiving party knows exactly this is exact information, that is what you signed, and it was never changed. So it is integrity is maintained, right? So we use that concept and to sign the identity in the first step. That is how we establish the identity of the components or of the backend systems. And for that, of course, we need to define a set of attributes that would be sent, and that is what we for that we use the standard of JWTs, right? So what is a JWT? It's basically, it has three parts to it. One is the header, and the second part is the payload, where the information is there, and there is the signature part to it. So for example, as you see on the screen, the header will give the input on what are the metadata about the JWT, like which algorithm is being used to encrypt information or sign information, what kind of JWT it is, and things like that. The payload is where you have the information. So when you are creating an identity token, for example, you have attributes like name, issue date, expiry as well, but other like identifier or other information can be added. So that is where your data actually goes in. And at the bottom you see the signature. This is where you, as I was explaining, you use the digital certificate or the private key to sign. So once you sign it, and then the corresponding signature is added. So a JWT is a combination of these three things, as displayed here. So it is appended using a dot in between these three parts of JWT. So first part you see in red is the header, next is the payload, and third is the signature part of JWT. And this is how all JWTs are formatted. And when you send it across to another party, they know this is how the JWT is structured, right? So moving into the iShare client session, as I mentioned, that we rely on JWT, and we have defined specific attributes that define the client session, and that forms your identity. So in header, we require that at least you have algorithm, you have type, and you have the X5C values. X5C, remember, this is your public key certificate. And then you have the payload. In the payload, you have the issuer, so who issued this token, and the subject to whom this subject is intended for. JTI is just an JWT identifier. It is a random character string, and there is no specific format. It's you can use any internal format for it. IIT basically means the issued at time. When was this client assertion issued? You can also specify that it cannot be used before this time. So it's again a timestamp, and the expiry. The expiry is supposed to be not more. It is supposed to be 30 seconds from the issued time, because we want to make sure that to maintain the security, the client assertion, when it is issued, it expires in 30 seconds. So if it is to be used after 30 seconds, it's invalid and it needs to be regenerated. And who is the audience? Basically, to whom you are sending this client assertion for, as a token of your identity. Its identifier has to be set here, right? So going through the process of JWT and signing it, so we have this information and then we sign it, and then the resulting JWT is actually a signed JWT, which is what we call client assertion. This is the first step before you actually make the connection to the other party in iShare terms, to receive a access token in order to get the data, access to the data, right? So before you connect to other party, you generate this client assertion and send it in the request saying, okay, hey, I need access to certain data, and here is my client assertion, and then the steps follows. So like as I was explaining, the service consumer or the data consumer ABC Trucking wants to get access to a machine at a warehouse 13, which is the provider of the data. So when it is connecting, it first sends along the client assertion to the service provider. So service provider can then validate who the party is in order to establish trust, right? So now at the receiving end, you can see that so to send that as a request, this is how we have specified in the request. This is how the consumer can send it to service provider. It specifies this is based on OAuth, by the way. So it's a token endpoint, and the grant type has to be specified, like client credentials. The scope is iShare when you want to exchange data with the terms of use, and you want to use the terms of use that you have agreed on iShare. And the client ID, what is the consumer's ID, and here is the assertion, the type and the assertion itself, and the JWT that you need to send. Once you send it, the service provider needs to validate it, and if it is all okay, then it issues you a token, a bearer token, and usually it also sends you the expiry time, so how long that token can be used, right? So that was more on the concept. Let's just have a look at the fictional use case, and how actually the sequence of the flows look like in a bit more detail. So here I'm talking about there is a trucking company who wants to access the container data at the terminal, but that trucking company is on contract on behalf of Banana and Company, who is actually the importer and who has whose container is arrived at a warehouse, and it wants to it asks ABC company to pick up that container on its behalf, right? So what are the steps? Let's look at how the process would look like, how we can solve this equation where ABC Trucking wants real-time information from the warehouse directly about the container. So it doesn't need to go through the Banana and Company every time it needs to get access to that information, right? So yeah, as I explained, this is the roles and the participants of this use use case, the banana company is the freight owner, or who is also the data owner in that sense. Warehouse 13 is the terminal where the container is. The trucking company is ABC Trucking, and there is an authorization registry provider, third-party authorization registry provider called Ask Me Anything. Right. Because the trust provider, as I mentioned, that we rely on eIDAS certificates, and we maintain a list of kind of certificates and the root authorities in satellite for that. So every participant, as a first step or on a regular basis, first needs to get a trusted list from the satellite, and it can cache that list, or it can, of course, request it multiple times, but ideally it should be cached, because adding and deleting of root authorities is not a very frequent exercise. So they can cache it for like daily basis or weekly basis or even monthly basis, for example. Right. So every participant who have implemented the APIs, they can also implement this service, and they can get that trusted list and store it locally. Then we start with the use case. So because Banana and Company wants to grant access to ABC Trucking at the warehouse, but ABC warehouse doesn't know who is ABC Trucking and why it should have the information for Banana and Company's containers. So Banana and Company first needs to authorize ABC Company or delegate its rights to it, ABC Trucking Company, right? So it uses the authorization registry where it can specify, hey, it can create a policy where it says ABC Trucking Company has access to containers XYZ, whatever the identifiers of that containers are on my behalf, basically. And it also informs, of course, ABC Trucking that, okay, when it is placing the order, or it is asking ABC Trucking to get the container information from warehouse, it says, okay, I have already given you the rights as well, and the rights can be found at authorization registry, Ask Me Anything. So now ABC Trucking Company has the information, and it can connect to the warehouse. And as we just saw, how it can use the token endpoint, and how it first needs to generate a client session in order to send it to the token request. It follows that process, and it sends the request to the warehouse. And then warehouse needs to now validate. So we will go through the steps of validation. So warehouse checks the certificate first, because there is a certificate in the JWT, and it is also the corresponding public certificate which was used, which corresponds to the private key which was used to sign the JWT itself, right? So because anyone can generate a digital certificate, and you need to validate the certificate if it was issued by the proper root authority, and whether it was the right kind of certificate, and whether it is still valid. So those kind of checks you need to do as a service provider when somebody sends you a signed JWT token. So that check is there. The next additional step what service provider is allowed to do is it can because the connection that ABC Trucking Company is now asking with warehouse is under iSHARE terms. So it wants to make sure that when it shares data with the consumer will abide by the terms of use that was agreed under iSHARE. And because otherwise, if that is not there, the trust level is not the same, because then the data is shared along with the license, but then it cannot be enforced legally, because then the consumer is not really, there is no proof that consumer has actually signed to that agreement, right? So in order to validate if the consumer is also part of this data space, the service provider can check with the satellite, but of course, before checking, the service provider itself needs to identify itself at the satellite. So it also connects the satellite using a connect token endpoint, and in return it receives the access token. The process is same. Service provider also generates a client assertion JWT and sends it at the token endpoint of satellite, and satellite verifies, validates its certificate and JWT and issues the token. So once it is issued a token, the service provider then can request information about ABC tracking at the satellite. And the satellite in response gives the information about this, about ABC tracking, whether it is a known party, what is its status currently, and what are the additional information that satellite registers about that organization. All can be shared with them. So once the service provider has that information, and as you remember, it also validated the certificate itself, then it can establish the trust or authenticity of the requester. Once it has done that, then it can issue an access token. And once the access token is issued, the ABC tracking can now actually ask for the data about the container, right? So using that token, it now asks that it needs the data about the container. It needs the ETA, for example. So it sends that in that request to the warehouse 13. Now warehouse 13 needs to validate, and it tries to verify, okay, this ABC tracking is asking information about certain container, but it is not the owner of that container. So it needs to check. It knows who is the owner of that container now. So and that is Banana and Company. So it needs to check if Banana and Company gave rights to the ABC tracking. And because if you see in this step, the ABC tracking is already informing warehouse 13 that my rights are registered at Ask Me Anything authorization registry. So it knows where to check the authorization or delegation. So actually the next steps are optional. It can pre-check if this Ask Me Anything is a valid authorization registry, the service provider, but that's not necessary. We'll just skip through that. So the service provider then tries to connect to Ask Me Anything. Again, the same process follows. It first needs to get an access token. So it generates a client assertion and sends it to the connect token endpoint of Ask Me Anything. Ask Me Anything does the same checks on the JWT. It checks the certificate. It then checks if warehouse 13 is a registered and known party in the data space. Then once it has verified that, then it sends back the token to warehouse 13. And then warehouse 13 can actually ask if ABC tracking is allowed information, certain information from the container Z. And that is what Ask Me Anything can say yes to, because if you remember in the first step, Banana and Company did register a policy where it allows access to ABC tracking. So this completes the chain in the sense that now warehouse 13 has evidence that it can actually share the data with ABC tracking. Of course, it validates that response, and that response is also signed by authorization registry. So it also validates the signature. And once it is satisfied, then it can actually share the data with the ABC tracking company. So this looks like many steps, but they are necessary in order to establish trust and maintain the trust level in the network. But these are very quick calls. They don't take in a very long time. They are very quick API calls, right? So this scenario, as we saw, is basically on two interactions between the machines of ABC tracking and warehouse 13. Next, what we can see is what happens if there is a human and there is an online portal, for example, and that human is actually trying to access using that portal, that information. So let's extend the same example, and I'm just adding a new participant here instead of the ABC tracking. Now it's the driver of the ABC tracking company. So it's actually the driver or the employee of ABC tracking company who is now the consumer. And we just changed the authorization registry from Ask Me Anything to Registry X. And here you see a new entity that's called Secure Logistics, or it's an identity provider, right? So because there is a human involved, as I mentioned, you need an identity provider to provide the identity as well. So in a sense, it's the driver X who wants that access is the trucker of ABC trucking. Now, how the process looks like, or how the authorizations should be given in first place. So Banana and Company, if you remember, it delegates its rights to ABC trucking, because it does not necessarily have to assign rights to the driver of the ABC trucking, because it's assigning it's contracting the company of ABC trucking company, and not the employee particularly. So it will just give the authorization it gave in the previous time, that ABC trucking is allowed access. The next step is that ABC trucking, going in the wrong direction here. The next step is the ABC trucking company authorizes its employee to have access to the containers of Banana and Company on its own behalf. So there is now two step of authorization or delegation of the authorization, right? So Banana and Company to ABC trucking, and ABC trucking to the driver of that company. So first, that is all set now. So now driver is actually okay. In this case, it's not the portal, but it's actually the access gate at the warehouse premises where it needs to get access to. So driver is at the gate of the warehouse, and now it is asking entry into the warehouse premises. And of course, warehouse receives a lot of truckers, and it only wants to give access to truckers when there is a container ready to be picked up for them. And if they are the actual trucker who are allowed to, because the owner of the container assigned them that contract, right? So we are enabling it using this case. So it's at the warehouse, and it is asking, can I have access to the warehouse premises? So of course, then it's a human that is asking for it. So warehouse 13 needs to know, okay, who are you, and can you identify yourself? So then it needs to verify using an identity provider. So it asks, okay, which identity provider can you use to identify yourself? The driver says, I can use Secure Logistics, so it is redirected to that. And this is based on OpenID Connect call, right? So it's on the authorize, and the request is redirected to the identity provider. The identity provider, because it receives that request from a service provider machine, it checks it also includes the JWT from service provider, so it can check the certificate and the JWT of the service provider, whether it is the right service provider who is connecting to the identity provider. So the same steps follows as we saw earlier. It can also check at the satellite whether this service provider is operating under the same data space and has agreed to the same terms and conditions. Of course, it can ask the details about it. It gets the details, and once it can proceed. So this is the slight variation where I was talking about. We deviated from OpenID Connect regular standard, where normally identity provider and service provider are pre-registered. But in iSHARE, we specified you do not need to be pre-registered. You can establish trust using this mechanism, and dynamically register the service provider. So the next step, of course, is it asks for the credentials of the driver, and driver can then provide its credentials. Once the credentials are validated, the identity provider sends the code to the service provider. Using that code, it can get an access token. So it gets an access token in return, and once it has an access token, it can ask details about the user or the driver, basically. So it asks, okay, who is this driver and which organization it belongs to, etc. Right. So it says, okay, this is driver X from ABC Trucking. So then warehouse knows now, okay, this is this identity and it has been authenticated identity. So now all it needs to do is it needs to check if that driver is right now authorized to have access to the premises, because as I mentioned, they only allow access to drivers when they have a container to be picked up or dropped, for example. Right. So now it needs to check at the authorization registry if this driver was issued the authorization. So it connects to the authorization registry using the token mechanism. Again, it follows the same process. The registry can check if the warehouse is also a known party. And once it has verified that, it issues a token. And once the token is there, the warehouse 13 can ask the authorization registry if his driver is authorized to get access to this container. Because there were two policies, one from Banana and Company to ABC and second from ABC to the driver. There is a link, and based on that, the authorization registry can say yes, the driver should have access to that. So warehouse 13 validates and checks the evidence and validates the JWT. Once it is satisfied, it allows access to the warehouse to the driver. So these are basically the concepts of IAM in iSHARE and how iSHARE satellite enables trust part in it, and also how do you make sure that there is a legal agreement of those participants as well, because only then they are listed in the satellite. So you complete the legal. So your technical solution is backed by your legal framework in such a manner, right? Here are a few useful links for you. I'm sure this presentation would be shared with you all later, so you can all have a look at these details and refer to the specifications there. Moving on to so that was all about the concepts of IAM or from iShare perspective. And as we already saw a bit of the implementation from especially in terms of marketplace, as Francisco explained to us, but that was only one piece of the whole use case that we had developed for this as an proof of concept for you guys. So now I will introduce you to an example use case that we develop, and where you can see the whole potential of how this is one of the solutions, or how such kind of use cases can benefit from this. But of course, these are not the only type of use cases. There can be more type of use cases which can be supported, right? So bringing back a quick recap about the data space. This is in general that we have as a data space. On one end is the consumer, on the other hand is the providers of the data, and at the bottom you see the enabling service providers like identity authorization service provider, marketplace, and other kind of service providers. And in the middle, of course, when you have a data space, you need the data space governance and the trust to be established in the data space in order for participants to exchange data in a secure and trusted manner. Roles in a data space. So this is how we provide. So you can see the logos of iShare and FIWARE, because we provide the open source components for each of these roles within the data space. But of course, we are not limited to it. But these enable. This is what we bring under i4Trust together for you to create a data space in your ecosystems, right? So let's look at the use case, which of course we'll also demo after I explain what the use case is. So in this use case, what we are talking about is there is a packet delivery company who wants to offer its services electronically. So we are talking about digital transformation of a packet delivery company. Then there is an e-commerce website, which is like a premium website, and it wants to give the best shopping experience to its customers. And yeah, it wants to provide all the kind of flexibility that it can to its customers. There is another e-commerce website which is just doing a regular business. Its target audience is basically all the people who look for bargain or cheap products. So it doesn't really look at various flexible offerings, but it really looks at how to offer services in a best and cheaper manner, but yet in an efficient and effective manner. Right. So these are the three main requirements of this use case, or three participants. So let's have a look at the participants in each in a bit more detail, exactly with their names. So first is, as I was explaining, there is this packet delivery company whose digital transformation is what we are aiming at. It has an ambition that it is actually a delivery company which delivers parcel across the world, and it has ambition to make it more efficient and provide easy procurement of its services, as well as to the tracking and other information to its customers, like also updating the order information directly on its backend. So it has decided to provide two kind of services. One is standard packet delivery company service, where buyers of the service, the customers of packet delivery company, are offered basic delivery services towards their clients. There is so once there is an order, it just flows. The packet delivery company manages when and where when it will be delivered, and things like that. On the other hand, it provides gold packet delivery service, where it allows complete flexibility of the delivery towards its clients, so that they can extend that offering towards their own clients, right? So in i4Trust sense, it will play the role of data provider and data owner, depending on which part of the use case you are in, right? Yeah, I was just explaining what are their offerings. I'll just skip it. Then there is this e-commerce Happy Pets, which I was explaining is the organization or e-commerce which wants to provide the best possible service to their customers, and it wants to give them complete flexibility as well. So it also offers its customers two types of offerings. One is this regular customers, and one is the prime. So regular customers get the standard delivery by default, and they cannot really manage or update their preference on delivery date and time. Whereas they also have concept called prime customers, where they can extend the offer of flexible delivery of products that their customers buy. So they can allow them to update date and time of the delivery. Next is the no cheaper online e-commerce, which is basically, as the name suggests, it's for the bargain cheap products, and it just wants to make an efficient use of the process to deliver it to their clients. So those were the participants. Now, and as we saw in the role model of data spaces, there are additional roles that we need. And iSHARE Satellite is basically acting as the trust provider, and this role is being played by one of the organizations in the data space. and it maintains the list of all the participants in that data space. And of course, there is also a marketplace, as was shown by Francisco. This is the i4Trust marketplace, which enables the publishing of the services and the procurement of the services by provider and consumer respectively. Right. So this is the map of the roles and the participants, which roles they are playing. So you see iSHARE Satellite as the trust provider, and you see on the data consuming side, depending on the which part of use case you are, the No Cheaper and Happy Pets. On the provider side, it's a packet delivery company, and the data owner can be No Cheaper, Happy Pets, packet delivery, depending on the which part of use case you are in. i4Trust marketplace provides a marketplace role, and these roles you see are blurred out. They are for a reason. So in this example, you will see that each of these roles or each of these participants have their own identity provider and own authorizations registries, but it's not mandatory to have that that way. They could also buy that service from a third-party provider. Then they don't need to implement it themselves. So, for example, there are if say No Cheaper is a small organization and it does not want to, it does not have enough resources to implement its own IT and manage it, then it can hire that services from someone else, right? So that's why they are in this specific color. Overall architecture, as already seen, but I'll give you a recap. So here you will see the marketplace, and there are few components of the marketplace, specifically logic proxy, which in our case is very relevant because it does provide the necessary functionality in terms of connecting to other participants. On this side, you see the No Cheaper No Cheaper organization. At the top, you see their online portal, and here they have their own instance of identity provider and also the authorization registry. Similarly, for Happy Pets as well, it's the same thing. They also have the e-commerce website, their identity provider, and authorization registry. Again, just to repeat myself, these components, they don't need to implement themselves necessarily, but they can. But they can also buy it from a third party completely different, right? On the right top, you see the packet delivery company, which implements a context broker, and it has also the authorization registry. Again, the same principle applies here. Authorization registry can be in-house or can also be external, and so is the identity provider in this. And they also have the portal where the consumers of these companies can actually request for updates, as we will see in the use case. And last but not the least is the satellite, which is the trust provider in the architecture. So this is yeah. So oh. So this is overall example, and as you can see, that packet delivery company offers the service, and the e-commerce websites wants to procure that service, and Happy Pets acquires the gold offering, and No Cheaper offer gets the standard offering, and then how it extends that to its customer and how it operates in this architecture. We'll see that live with the help of my colleague Dennis.
All right, thank you.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, so my name is Dennis Wendland from FIWARE Foundation, and so I'm gonna show now the demo of the proof of concept, and afterwards you also can go through some slides where I present the technical details about what is happening in the background. So sharing my screen now, which you can hopefully see. So let's jump some steps forward. As introduced by Rajiv, there's the setup of a packet delivery company and some e-commerce shop retailers with their customers. And this packet delivery company is providing a portal application where such customers could access their delivery orders and maybe even change certain attributes for their delivery orders. And now let's try, without having acquired any offering or something like that, to access a delivery order via this delivery portal. And that's just a simple demo application that's providing now that I can log in using the identity provider of Happy Pets. So being a customer of Happy Pets now, I'm logging in, forwarded to this page now, and now I'm trying to access a specific delivery order, which is having this ID, and trying to retrieve the information about this. And as you can see, there's now an error because the PEP proxy in front of the context broker where the request was sent to is rejecting the request because I'm not allowed to do this. Okay, so this is the marketplace as you've already seen it in the presentation from Francisco. And what I'm going to do now is to create now a product for this premium offering of the packet delivery company. As you can see, there's also this basic offering. This is something I've already done before to save some time now. So I'm logging in now, being an employee of the packet delivery company. So I'm forwarded now to their identity provider, logging in with my employee account. And now going to my stock and to my product specifications. As I said, there's already the basic one, and now let's look on how to create the premium offering. So for that, checking a name, you can also specify some version, brand, and it's prepared a short description text to put here. So what we have is a digital product, and it's an NGS ILD data service. So in the background, we have a context broker where the delivery orders are represented by entities stored at this context broker. So I'm providing now the asset URL. As you can see, it's not directly forwarding to the context broker instance, but to an API umbrella, which is put in front, being the PEP proxy, providing here the ID of the authorization registry, the packet delivery company, and the endpoint of it. Putting now the duration of this policy just to 30 minutes. So for the duration of this demonstration, that's sufficient. But of course, if you would like to allow your consumers to have unlimited access, you would just put a very large number for 100 years or something like that. The resource type, that's actually the entity type, type delivery order. And now for the premium service, we are allowing GET requests to all of the attributes, and we are allowing patch requests, but only for the attributes PTA and PDA, which is the planned time and the planned date of arrival of the delivery orders. So skipping the characteristics, we can upload a nice picture for the service showing the premium delivery order. And that's it for the product, which I'm now also setting to launched. So now we have the premium product offering, and now we specification. Now we need also an offering. So creating now the offering for this. also put some business description here shown to the customers. No, so I'm selecting now this premium service product, which I just created a few seconds ago, and put that into this catalog. Skipping this category. Choose now any type of license. Skipping the SLA. And now let's add a price plan because it's a premium offering. Maybe some monthly payment. Let's say 500 euros. I also put text here. But of course, you could now also add additional price plans like for a pay-per-use plan or single payment, for instance. And I'm using the default revenue sharing model. So now this offering was created. And that's it basically now from the packet delivery company. So the employee of packet delivery company now created this offering on the marketplace. Now let's switch to the other side. Now I'm an employee of Happy Pets, so this premium e-commerce shop system. And this employee of Happy Pets now uses its Happy Pets IDP to log in now to the marketplace. So what happens now is I'm getting forwarded to the IDP of the Happy Pets company. And now I'm logging in with my employee account there. And now I see, okay, great, this packet delivery company, they have some premium offering. Can I also check the characteristics? I see that's an NGS ILD endpoint, that URL. And when I acquire access, I can send GET and patch requests on entities of type delivery order, while for patch only allowed to patch these two attributes. So I'm adding this now to my cart. Of course, I have to accept the terms and conditions. And as you can see now, there's only one price plan, this 500 euros per month, which I'm adding now to my cart. So now let's check out. Now I'm forwarded to PayPal. Actually, it's a sandbox now, so no real money involved here. And can now select some payment method. Let's choose that credit card here. And the payment has been accepted. Okay. Maybe let's see what happened now in the background is I'm going now to the authorization registry, and for the registry of the packet delivery company, let's have to copy the two-factor code here. So what happened now is that the marketplace, now during the acquisition of this offering, created a policy at the registry of packet delivery, which states that packet delivery now issued a policy to Happy Pets for patch requests on these attributes for any entity of type delivery order, and to do GET requests on all attributes on any entity of type delivery order. And logging out here again. And what I can also show now, also now logging in to the registry of Happy Pets. So this is something that I've also already done. So what we assume now in our use case here is that the customer of Happy Pets already placed an order on the shop, So there is already a delivery order. So this guy is already registered, and in the registry of Happy Pets, hope I choose the correct one now. No, that's the wrong one. Maybe this one. Yes, there's a similar policy where Happy Pets now delegates this access to this end customer. So here is the issuer now the Happy Pets company, and the access subject is the ID, actually the ID of the customer in the IDP of Happy Pets, and also allowing him, he's doing these GET requests on delivery orders and patch requests on these attributes, but even only for specific entity ID, because it's just for the delivery order belonging to this customer. And this is something that needs to be done by the shop system of Happy Pets, usually during registration, when such customer then chooses this prime offering at the shop. But for this demo, this is something I've done before manually. So this is a delegated policy to this customer. And now let's see what happens now if this user now again tries to access its delivery order. As you can see, that's also the ID. It should allow him the access here from the policy. And now when I'm getting delivery order, so what this portal now is doing in the background is using the token obtained from the identity provider of Happy Pets, sending a request to API Umbrella, requesting for this GET to the context broker, and now access was granted due to these two policies at the registries of Happy Pets and Packet Delivery Company. And now let's also test whether we can change something, because this prime customer is also allowed to change something, so to send patch requests actually. So let's say this delivery order is planned for 11 o'clock. That's maybe too early. It's the time where I'm working, so let's put it to the evening. So what it's doing now, it's sending now the patch request, and afterwards also doing a GET again. And now you can see the entity has changed for the attribute of the planned time of arrival. Okay. Maybe I'm logging out here. And what I can also show, because as you have seen, there's also a second user at the Happy Pets, but that's only a standard user. So although Happy Pets has acquired access to the gold offering of the Packet Delivery Company, to this customer it just delegates the GET access rights. So for this, I log out here first. So now let's log in. And now I'm logging in as a standard customer. And the standard customer is allowed to access that delivery order, the 002 at the end. So it shouldn't be a problem now to send a GET request. But when I'm trying now to change something, that should be rejected, because this policy, the user policy at the registry of Happy Pets is not allowing me to do these patch requests. So now the whole process can be repeated now for No Cheaper. So now I'm an employee of No Cheaper, logging in using their IDP. And this No Cheaper, for them, this basic service is sufficient. So as you can see here, only GET requests are allowed and no patch requests. So what they actually can delegate to their users is just these GET permissions on these delivery orders. As you can see, there's no price plan, because this basic service is free. Oh, there's still something old one. What's happening? Okay, now it crashed. Anyway, I think you got it. I just wanted to show now for No Cheaper that there also is not this patch request allowed, but actually I've also shown that for Happy Pets. That's something we should look at. Okay, that's about the demo. Now let's continue with the presentation and see what actually happened. So just to repeat now again an overview of this example. So what I've showed is how the access rights for a data service within a trusted data space can be delegated from an organizational level to a user level, and which means also in the end that the service provider does not need to have any knowledge about the final users which access the service. And the different parties you have seen was this packet delivery company offering this delivery order service on the marketplace. These two shops, though no cheaper, that didn't work now. And actually the whole process was divided into 3 different steps. At first, the creation of the offering, which was done by this employee of the packet delivery company, the acquisition of an offering that was done by some employee of the shop company, and finally accessing the delivery order service by some customer. And about the packet delivery company, so you have seen that provided a digital service about its packet delivery orders, and technically, as you've said, there's a context broker in the background holding entities of type delivery order, which are characterized by specific attributes like an issuer of the delivery or destiny, origin and delivery addresses, and these planned date and time of arrival, and also some estimated date and time of arrival. And for this service, there were these 2 different service levels, standard and gold, the one only allowing the read access and the other one also allowing to change certain attributes. In this case, I've shown only these PTA and PDA. So technically either allowing GET requests or also allowing patch requests. And these services are offered on the marketplace and then shown as a basic and as a premium service offering. And then these Happy Pets, and now cheaper, acquired access to these offerings on the marketplace, while Happy Pets was supposed to acquire the premium offering and not cheaper, just the basic one. And then after the acquisition of this offering, these human customers, after they've checked out at the shop and there's already some existing delivery orders, were able to access them on the portal application of the packet delivery company and maybe even change certain attributes from them. So now getting a bit more into the technical details. So that's the architectural overview, basically also already explained by Rajiv. So we can go through this quickly. So it consists of this marketplace, which is the business API ecosystem presented at the beginning from Francisco for the packet delivery company. That consisted now of a context broker and in front a PEP proxy and PDP, which is API umbrella. And there's an authorization registry, plus a tiny microservice and activation service in front, which we added in order to allow the marketplace to create policies here on behalf of the packet delivery company. And then there's the identity provider, which was required for the employee to log in at the marketplace and this portal application to be used by the customers. And for the shop systems, of course, there would be some shop system applications. This is something we skipped for this demo, assuming that there are already existing delivery orders. And then they consist of these identity providers for their company employees and for their customers, and also having their own registries holding the policies of their customers. And of course, there was in all interactions mostly this iSHARE satellite involved as trust authority. Okay, so the marketplace, short overview. Basically, it's consisting of databases and then different components providing several APIs. On the one hand, there are some reference implementation of the TM Forum APIs, a component for the charging backend handling or the rating, charging, and billing, and also component handling the revenue settlement and sharing. And then this logic proxy, which is actually showing the UI of the marketplace and also doing the authentication and orchestrating all these different APIs. Then this is Trust Authority, where we are using this iSHARE satellite test instance. And there were already these different organizations created and the different certificates issued. And each organization having their specific EORI ID is shown here. And this allows every participant in this whole data space here to verify the status of each other organization. So for the shop, for Happy Pets, as you've seen, there were two identity providers, because one for the employees, which was used for the login to the marketplace, and then there's a second identity provider just for their customers of the shop system, which of course would be also used to log in at their shop system itself, which we skipped now for simplicity, but also was used to log into the portal application of the packet delivery company. And also there was an instance of this authorization registry, where we're using now a central test instance of an iSHARE authorization registry. But meanwhile, these identity providers, because that's KeyRock, there's also now an iSHARE compliant authorization registry implemented, so could be also used as registry from now on. And so what we assumed was that there was already existing customer with already pre-existing delivery orders, and as I've shown, there were also even the policies already assigned to these customers by the Happy Pets organization. It's also shown here again as simplified, as I've shown in the registry itself, where this policy was issued by Happy Pets to some customer ID for doing this patch and get requests. Okay, for not cheaper, it would be similar with the same infrastructure, but just delegating this get access to the customers in the registry. So on the packet delivery company side, there exists of this portal application, which I've shown was a very simple demo, and also an identity provider to be used by the employees to log in at the marketplace, for instance. And of course, the context broker providing the NGSI LD API for allowing to access these entities for the delivery orders. And these were already initially created for this demonstration, having a structure like this here. So some ID and type of delivery order, and then different attributes like what I've said in the beginning, issuer, destiny, and so on and so on. And of course, also this PDA and PDA. Furthermore, there's an instance of this API umbrella with a specific configuration. Coming later on back to this specific authorization mode, which is doing these different steps on evaluating these different policies. Then there's also an authorization registry at packet delivery company, which is holding the organizational access policies that were created by the marketplace when an offering is acquired by a different organization. And as I said, there's some activation service in front, which is a small service which is required to enable the marketplace to create policies here on the registry from packet delivery company. And for this, there's an additional policy required, which allows the marketplace instance to create objects. So yes, it's allowed a post request of type delegation evidence, which are actually the policies as you have seen them. Okay, now let's go to the detailed steps, what actually happened in the different steps. So the first one was we showed how to create an offering as an employee of the packet delivery company. So the first place, of course, there was this login process. So this employee gets forwarded to the identity provider of packet delivery company, which then first validates at the trust authority whether the marketplace is a trusted party, and then performs the login based on the OpenID Connect standard. And after logging in, I created on the marketplace the offering, providing the different information like the endpoint and the access rights for the different parameters. Then the acquisition, the access rights. Now for the case of Happy Pets, so in this case, an employee of Happy Pets started the login process, so forwarded now to the identity provider of Happy Pets, which also then checks against the trust authority first whether marketplace is trusted party, and if yes, the user can log in using the IDP, and then the login process also is done based on the OpenID Connect scheme. And then the employee was able to select specific offering, in this case, the premium service offering, and did the checkout and the payment and everything. And then finally doing the acquisition, then the marketplace sent a request to this activation service, which also first involves to retrieve a token. In this process, also the registry of packet delivery company also checks against the trust authority whether the marketplace is a valid participant, and then using the activation service, such policy was created to register Happy Pets as an organization, which was then able also to assign these policies or to delegate these policies to their customers. And yes, so again, this actually what happened then, and that such policy got created at the registry, stating these patch and get requests are up from now on allowed for Happy Pets organization. And now what didn't show now was a scenario for No Cheaper, but it's actually the same with the whole login process, but then of course using the IDP of No Cheaper. And then when selecting this basic offering, then there would be a policy created at the registry stating that No Cheaper is allowed to access the delivery orders using GET requests. Now, finally, accessing the service, that was done by the customers. So the Happy Pets customer accessed this portal application and also initiated a login process, was then forwarded to the IDP of Happy Pets for their shop customers. Also in this process, there's also check against the trust authority whether this packet delivery company is a trusted participant. And then also this login is performed using the OpenID Connect standard. And what happens now is that there's a JSON Web Token issued for this user during this login process. And this now either can contain information about the registry that holds the policies about this customer, so access information about this registry, or a second possible option would be that this JSON Web Token already directly contains these policies. So this both is possible, and in the case currently how it's implemented, it's containing the information about this registry, and then continuing now. So then the customer triggered now a request through the portal, first to do a get on one of the delivery orders, and afterwards also to do a patch request on a specific entity ID. For this, the portal is using the JSON Web Token issued for this customer during the login process. This is sent in the header to the API umbrella instance together with the request, which should be forwarded to the context broker. And what API umbrella is now doing is first validating the JSON Web Token using these certificates. And then, since this JSON Web Token contains the information about this authorization registry, which holds the policies of the customer, so API umbrella is sending a request to this registry to request the policies of this customer, which belongs to the type of request the user is trying to do against the context broker. And of course, if these policies would already be part of the JSON Web Token, then this step could be skipped. And then it also checks against the authorization registry of packet delivery company whether this organization of Happy Pets is actually allowed to delegate such access rights to this customer. And only if these two requirements are fulfilled, then the access is granted and the request is forwarded to the context broker. So to summarize again these two steps from API umbrella. So on the one hand, say there's now this patch request coming from this portal application on a specific delivery order. API umbrella needs to check on the one hand at the registry of the packet delivery company whether they issued such policy to the Happy Pets organization to do these patch requests, and also to check for, the user policy whether Happy Pets delegated such access rights to this end user. And similar, this would work for the case of no cheaper, but where these policies would only hold these actions for GET requests. And which means that such customer now of no cheaper would try to do a patch request here, this would be denied due to the missing policy at the registry of the packet delivery company. So finally, I want to show quickly how to deploy all these different components of this use case on the example of Kubernetes. And I think if you get the slides later, then you can have a look at all of these links. But basically, the different components. So the first place, there's this marketplace. Of course, one needs to deploy these databases and Elasticsearch instances required, and the components of the business API ecosystem itself. For the business API ecosystem, there are Helm charts provided, currently still in the development branch, but they will get released soon. So if you want to use them, you have to use those for the branch for the moment. And yeah, and then you can use Helm to deploy all these different components. Here's also the different Docker image from the business API ecosystem listed, which can be used. Same for Keyword. There were several instances in this use case, so different identity providers on the side of the shops, and also for the packet delivery company, there was an identity provider using the Keyword. And there's also an Helm chart available, also still on a development branch. It's also released soon. And also Keyword requires an MySQL database, but of course you can use the one previously deployed or use a separate one for Keyword. And then using this Helm chart, you can also deploy Keyword There's also this latest Docker image to be used. For the context broker, there's already also a release Helm chart available to be used. I think currently we have 07 from OENLD deployed here in this use case, which also requires a MongoDB database to be deployed additionally. And for API Umbrella, which takes place of the PEP proxy and the PDP, also a Helm chart, also in the development branch, and so can also deploy that using Helm and using that Docker image which is available. For API Umbrella, some comments about configuration to be done for this use case. So what you need to do is create an API backend, which points to the actual context broker, which see the internal endpoint within the Kubernetes cluster of this OEN instance, and providing the external host for public access and the prefixes of the URL. What important thing is what one needs to do, because these JSON Web Tokens that are sent to API Umbrella containing all these certificates and maybe even the policies are very, very large, and I suggest to override them before API Umbrella forwards these tokens to the context broker, because I've seen problems then when handling these large authorization headers. And the most important thing, there's the latest API Umbrella release, there's a new configuration option called authorization mode, where the default one is the role-based authorization, what still can be used with API Umbrella as before, but there's now an additional mode for this context broker, attribute-based, because there's no further configuration required, but API Umbrella actually analyzes the request coming in and checks whether that's a patch, a get, or a post or a delete request, and on what entities and which entity ID the request is going to, or which attributes, and then from this automatically evaluates the required policy to in order to be authorized to do this operation. Then there were two extra applications specifically implemented now for this demo. On the one hand, this portal. If you want to use that, it's also publicly available on GitHub under the i4Trust organization. Also, this activation service, which is needed when the marketplace should be able to create policies at the registry of the service provider. And also for those, there are Helm charts provided under the i4Trust organization to deploy them on Kubernetes, and also these Docker images are available under the i4Trust organization. Then for the authorization registry and the scheme owner, or the iSHARE satellite. So for the iSHARE satellite, we used this test instance from iSHARE. I've also put a link about this API documentation from it, in case that you want to participate in this concept, or want to try it out, then you need to contact iSHARE in order to get registered at their satellite and to retrieve certificates. And from the registry, was also using now this test instance from iSHARE. There's also linked to this reference implementation. So basically, it's also possible to set up your own registry, or to implement your own registry following this API documentation. But as I said, meanwhile in Keyrock, there's also this authorization registry functionality implemented, described by this API documentation. So you can handle all of this also with Keyrock. Okay, so coming to an end, there are two repositories providing some examples. As I've shown now, these deployment instructions, there's some more information and examples on how to deploy all these components on Kubernetes using the different Helm charts. And if you're interested in general about data spaces, there's also additional information in the FIWARE catalog. And that's with my presentation. So first of all, thanks for listening. And I think we now still have plenty of time for questions. Okay, I don't know. Also maybe questions to the previous presenters. Oh, there's the first question. Licenses. Basically, so everything, all of the FIWARE components are public open source with the different licenses shown at the different GitHub repositories. Maybe about the iSHARE components, maybe Rajiv can say something to that.
On iShare, the components that are available on GitHub, they are actually all using unlicensed, so you are actually free to use it as you wish. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think so. Oh, there's a raised hand.
Yes. So I'm not really understood what is the license module of the i4Trust additionally software. This was not really published during the last day and today. It is a good idea to add this to the FIWARE system. I agree. But what is the really licenses which is used there? Did we have to pay for it? To whom? In which circumstances, and so on?
So licenses for the software, as we mentioned, that it's all open source, so you don't need to pay anything to us. All components, yeah, there's no payment involved.
Okay, thank you. This I overheard yesterday or today. Sorry for it.
No problems.
Okay, any more questions? If not, I don't know. Rajiv, Francisco, are you fine then with closing the session?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Okay, then, yeah, thank you all for listening. And then I wish you a nice evening and, of course, a nice weekend.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.